Hi there, Corey. This is a response to your video on atheism and negative theology. Yeah, there's comments and probably some questions embedded in this, and some, I guess some. I don't know, trying to articulate where I am in relation to all this, because I'm trying to find the truth, if you like. And first thing to say is I completely sympathise. Well, not completely. I partially sympathise with your position. I have a great deal of, I find negative theology very compelling. I love reading people like James Carse, and I love hearing about the via negativa, and the whole idea of all that stuff is incredibly compelling, and experiential. I've experienced those things. So I'm not blind to what you're saying there, but at the same time, I have a great deal of resistance to it, and I don't think it's just bloody mindedness. I think it's resistance to it because of some distinct problems I see within it. I mean, the first thing is to do with this. Well, there's a phrase you use in there. You talk about purpose, and you say the feeling of purpose. And coincidentally, I was looking at a video by Robert Burton, who I've mentioned in a couple of my recent videos, on Google Talks, and he uses that phrase. He says the feeling of purpose. Robert Burton wrote a book on being certain, and he talks about certainty as a felt sense that accompanies knowledge, and he defines this feeling of purpose as spirituality, or conversely, he defines spirituality as the feeling of purpose. And I think it is quite interesting that when people are engaged in purposive behaviours, they do tend to use phrases like, committing to something larger than yourself, or committing to a higher set of motives and intentions. So it has a lot of the same kind of phraseology around it, and some of the same metaphors are at play that you find in religious talk. So I don't think he's miles off the mark there, really. Just the feeling of purpose, and kind of losing one's identity in the undivided collective of a collective purpose, or even a purpose that one feels is collective just because it's so damn big. I can see the attractions of that, but at the same time, it's a feeling. It's a feeling of purpose, and that's for me, you're in the realms of psychology there. Now, it might be psychology which you have and I have, and thousands of other people. Maybe everybody has. Maybe we're all made of the same meat. So it's quite likely that we're all capable of having those feelings of purpose. In fact, I know we do, because we all know things. And when you know things, you have a feeling of knowing, and you have a feeling of certainty. And purpose is a kind of elevated feeling of certainty, some would say. So, but just because we all have that feeling doesn't mean it's of greater significance, any more than feeling sad, or feeling happy, or feeling tired, or feeling angry, or feeling bored, or feeling lonely is of greater significance. So I have some problems there. And also there's this sense, which I'm partly picking up from your video, but I've picked up many times elsewhere, which is this thing that the feeling of purpose, or elsewhere you refer to it as a kind of captivation. You don't use the word captivation, but you talk about the mystery, which I would kind of rephrase as being captivated by the mystery, or that sense of being kind of lost in that, or being just having some kind of relationship to that. So this feeling of purpose, this feeling of the divine, if you like, or the feeling of the sacred, very loaded terms, but I'll borrow them for now. Why does that feeling trump other feelings? Why does it act as a container for all of the rest of activity, when other feelings don't act as containers? In fact, other feelings, we would say, are only, of course, they're of great personal significance, and we can organise our lives to make sure that individuals feel appropriate feelings and don't feel bad feelings. But it doesn't mean to say that those things have any relationship to the cosmos, or any relation to anything. They're part of human functioning, it seems to me. So I don't understand why the feeling of the divine is any more significant than those other feelings. Apart from the fact it feels nice. But I don't understand why it would be an aspirational goal, for example. Yeah, a couple of other bits and pieces. Oh God, I put a note here, Corey. It says, "Why good news?" I think you say something in there about. I can't remember the context, but I'm just wondering why good news. What is it that makes news good news? Well, it's good news because it appears significant to human beings, isn't it? I mean, that's what makes news good or bad. Good news is something that brings benefits to you or to people like you or is in correspondence to your own values, to human values. Bad news is something that works against human values or works against you and your family and your kin, possibly. So, why is it good news? It can only be good news if we're applying human values to it. So I don't really understand that. And this last thing, and this is more of a question because I know you'll know more about this than I do, is this thing about language and the sound of God. God comes out of your mouth. I can't remember who said it. Probably Bertrand Russell or somebody said, God is just like any other three letters, random three letters stuck together. It has no more significance than that. But I think you're kind of right. But I guess I'm curious. To what extent is that an artifact of language? I mean, a while back you made a couple of videos. It was quite a long time ago about invisible monkeys stalking YouTube, because there seemed to be like, if I understand you correctly, that you seem to be suggesting that there was this kind of alluded to talk, it's kind of God-related talk, which seemed to be like a set of monkeys on people's backs, and to what extent might that same be said of language? Is God something in the language? This the kind of qualifier that we always refer to when we use words like "it's raining" and there being no subject that's doing the raining. It's just some nebulous actor behind the scenes, or any of those kind of verbs really, or just the I know you would probably call it the logos, and you're probably right. But to what extent is the logos just an artifact of the language? Like putting two diffraction gratings across one another, you get moire patterns. But is there something there about the logos being an artifact of the language, not the guarantor of it, really? I suppose. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say, really. Yeah, I've got a lot of problems with this language, I'll be frank with you. I have a lot of problems with the words like sacred and divinity and mystery. Yeah, I don't know where we can get with that lexicon, if I'm frank. I mean, I absolutely admire your efforts to pursue those monkeys wherever they take you. And but if I'm honest with you, the only connection I can have with it is as a kind of mental exercise. What happens if I start thinking in this way? What happens to me as an individual, as a psychology, if I start telling myself this story about how the world works? That's the connection. I can't relate it to the world out there at all, and I can't relate it to my interpersonal experiences, and I can't really relate it to human values, because my thinking there stalls out on the fact that these things are artifacts. I think these things are artifacts. Anyway, thanks very much for that.